All right, let's dive into another deep dive. This time, we're headed underwater.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
Well, not literally, of course.
Right.
More like we're exploring underwater sci-fi TV shows.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, we've got this cool article from the Salt Lake City Weekly.
Okay.
It lists some really interesting kind of hidden gem shows.
Hidden gems, huh? Those are always fun to discover.
Exactly. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I'm happy to share. I mean, it is fascinating how the ocean, this huge, mysterious place, really sparks our imagination.
Absolutely, especially in science fiction.
Yeah.
It's like we know so little about what's actually down there.
Right.
So in sci-fi, there's so much potential for crazy stories.
Oh, definitely.
And speaking of crazy, one of the shows this article talks about is The Rig. It takes place on a Scottish oil rig where things get really bad really fast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it kind of taps into that fear of the unknown, like what's lurking in the depths.
Yeah, like a modern day Lovecraftian story almost.
Exactly, where like humanity's greed for resources awakens something ancient and dangerous.
It makes you think about all those deep sea mining projects going on right now.
Right? Like, are we messing with something we don't understand? Could it cause an ecological disaster?
That's a question. The rig definitely makes you consider.
Yeah, and it's not just physical danger either.
No, it's definitely more than that.
Like, the show also explores how isolation and this existential threat just break people down mentally.
Oh, for sure. And the actors, Ian Glenn, Martin Compston, and Emily Hampshire, they really nail that sense of claustrophobia and fear.
It really makes you realize how fragile civilization is when we're up against forces we can't control.
True, true.
So from the North Sea, let's move on to another mysterious place, the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, classic.
There's another show on our list, The Triangle, which deals with that legendary area.
I always find the Bermuda Triangle intriguing. There's so many theories about it.
Right. And the Triangle mixes sci-fi with this conspiracy thriller vibe. So you have this team of experts trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
But then they uncover a government cover-up.
Oh, so there's a whole other layer to it then.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, like, how much do we really know about our oceans?
Right, and what are governments hiding from us?
It plays on that idea that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. Now, switching gears a bit, we have The Swarm.
The Swarm, okay.
Which feels, I don't know, super relevant today.
How so?
Well, with all the worries about climate change and how we're impacting the environment, and The Swarm takes that anxiety and just explodes it, like the ocean is fighting back.
Wow.
Yeah, the sea creatures, even orcas, are turning against humanity and causing utter chaos.
That sounds intense.
It is, and visually stunning, too. Like, the orca attack scenes are terrifying, but also mesmerizing.
Interesting.
What I find fascinating about The Swarm is that it flips the script.
What do you mean?
Well, usually in monster movies, the creatures are the bad guys, right? But here, you kind of sympathize with them.
You're saying they're the ones defending their home.
Exactly. Against us, the invasive species.
That's a thought-provoking perspective.
Yeah, it's a reminder that our choices have consequences, and maybe we're not the only ones who matter on this planet.
It's a powerful message.
And you see this ego-conscious sci-fi popping up more and more, reflecting our real-world anxieties.
You think so? I mean, I guess it makes sense.
It's not just about escapism anymore. Sci-fi is holding a mirror up to our fears and hopes for the future.
That's true.
And with The Swarm being a European co-production, it shows these concerns are global.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the ocean connects us all, no matter where we are.
Okay, let's dive into something a little more classic now. How about Sequest DSV?
Sequest DSV? Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Takes us back to the 90s when underwater sci-fi was all about hope and exploration.
It was a more optimistic time, wasn't it?
It really was.
Sequest had that utopian vision, like humanity had figured things out and created this peaceful underwater society.
And with Roy Scheider from Jaws leading the way.
Of course, who better to navigate the depths?
Right. It was like Star Trek, but underwater, with high-tech submarines, underwater cities, even talking dolphins.
I can see why you called it classic.
It might seem a bit cheesy now, but I kind of miss that 90s optimism.
Yeah, it's interesting how our view of the future has changed.
For sure. Back then, the underwater world seemed full of possibilities.
And now?
Now, it often feels like a source of anxiety, like something to fear.
That's a good point.
And speaking of anxiety, let's talk about Surface.
Surface, okay.
This one had a kind of goofy marketing campaign, with Lake Bell fighting sea monsters in a bikini.
Huh. Not exactly what you'd expect from a show about government conspiracies and genetic engineering.
I know, right?
It sounds like they were going for a very different tone there.
Yeah, but beneath that surface, pun intended, Surface tackled some serious stuff.
Right.
like the unintended consequences of our actions and how those empower manipulate information.
Oh, wow. So it went pretty deep then.
It did, and those disaster sequences were pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Puerto Rico and parts of the East Coast getting wiped out. It was serious stuff.
That's wild.
It shows just how powerful nature can be, whether we mess with it or it just unleashes itself.
You're right. We're pretty vulnerable in the end.
Exactly. And speaking of destructive forces, let's move on to The Last Ship.
Okay, what's that one about?
This one takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where a pandemic has wiped out most of humanity.
Oh, wow. Another pandemic story.
I know, but this one was before the real pandemic, so it really tapped into that fear.
Makes sense.
It's set on a naval destroyer, with the crew desperately searching for a cure.
Oh, so like a race against time.
Yeah, and Eric Dane, before his Euphoria days, he was fantastic as the captain.
I can imagine him pulling that off.
He totally nailed that Captain America at sea vibe.
Haha, I love it.
Okay, now for something completely different. Sealab 2021.
Sealab 2021. What's that one about?
This is where we leave serious sci-fi and enter the world of Adult Swim absurdity.
Okay, this should be interesting.
It's basically a satire of underwater research, using animation from a 70s cartoon.
Really?
Yeah, and it features this totally wacky and incompetent crew who constantly get into ridiculous situations.
So pure comedy then.
Pretty much. It's definitely not for everyone, but there's a certain charm to its chaotic energy.
I can imagine that.
It's a good reminder that even in sci-fi, there's room for silliness and experimentation.
Definitely. Not everything has to be doom and gloom.
And it shows how one simple concept, people living and working underwater, can be interpreted in so many ways.
Yeah, you've got the serious drama of the rig, the conspiracy of the triangle, and then the pure humor of Sealab 2021.
Exactly. And speaking of variety, let's not forget Stingray, a classic from the 60s.
Oh, wow, that's going way back.
I know, right? It even predates Sequest.
So what's Stingray all about?
Well, it's a fascinating example of early puppetry in sci-fi.
Puppetry and sci-fi.
Yeah, they had these visually striking underwater vehicles and alien creatures, all done with puppets.
That's pretty creative, especially for that time.
It might look a bit dated now, but it shows that imagination can thrive even with limited technology.
That's true.
I remember those puppets being a little creepy, but they definitely captured my imagination as a kid.
So what kind of adventures did they have?
Oh, it was all about underwater exploration and danger.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, the World Aquanaut Security Patrol, or WASP, was constantly battling these human-hating aquamphibians.
Aquamphibians, huh?
Yeah, they were pretty menacing.
It sounds like Stingray reflected some of those Cold War anxieties, too, with the constant threat from the unknown depths.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that science fiction often reflects the anxieties of the time it was created in.
Makes sense.
So we've gone from eco-horror to conspiracy thriller, from utopian visions to post-apocalyptic nightmares, and even some puppet-fueled Cold War paranoia.
Wow, quite the range of themes.
And we've only just scratched the surface of underwater sci-fi.
It's amazing how diverse this genre is, isn't it?
It really is. And
Yeah.
what ties it all together is this fascination with the ocean.
This vast, mysterious realm that both draws us in and scares us at the same time.
It's a world full of beauty and wonder, but also danger and the unknown.
And we've only explored a tiny fraction of it, both in reality and in fiction.
That's a good point. There's so much more to discover out there. I'm really curious to see where these stories go.
Me too.
Maybe we'll see underwater cities powered by renewable energy, or encounters with alien life that change how we view intelligence.
Or stories about the ocean's ability to heal itself, to adapt and thrive.
The possibilities are endless. But one thing's for sure, I think these stories will always reflect our fascination with the ocean, our fears for its future, and our hopes for what it could be.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, we've reached the end of our deep dive into underwater sci-fi.
From Scottish oil rigs to the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle.
From post-apocalyptic pandemics to, talking dolphins.
We've covered a lot of ground.
And hopefully we've given you some new shows to check out, maybe spark some interesting thoughts about our connection to the ocean.
If you're feeling inspired to explore further, there's a whole world of stories out there just waiting to be discovered.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.